Welcome to the Obesity Medicine Podcast with your host, Dr. Matea Rentia, board certified in internal medicine and obesity medicine. Here, we talk about a path to metabolic health, and we have real conversations about chronic weight management and living a full life. Just a reminder, I am a physician, but I'm not your physician. So everything that's on this podcast is for informational purposes, but please go talk to your doctor about what's right for you. There is no medical advice being given on this podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. How are you all doing? I'm recording this on a Saturday, which I normally don't do, but something came across my social media feed here. It was actually in a physician group, and a person was talking about their experience, but I have seen this so often, not only in my patients and also friends over the past few years, that we need to talk about it, which is when you're going on and off of these GLP-1 medications, how sometimes when you come back to it, it's not effective. And I want to give some of my thoughts on that and some of what else might not be working when you're doing that. And again, I know we've talked extensively very recently here about how it's so unfortunate that financial aspects are a big part here because insurance doesn't cover it a lot of the time. So, all that's involved, but I still think that this is a really valid conversation for us to have. Okay, but before we do that, I wanted to just talk real quick. I'm sure I've probably brought this up a bunch. I can't remember sometimes what I've said or not on the podcast, but I've been loving recently this book, Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy. It's by Matthew Kelly. I'll make sure to link it in the show notes. If you come over to my website, rentiaclinic.com, and you click on podcast, we have for every single episode, we have all of the written notes there, links to everything. That's a really good resource if you're someone that you hear an episode and you're thinking, oh, I want to go check those things out or go read that book, whatever it is. You can always come over to my website and it's all there. There's even a search bar at the bottom of that podcast page, and you can put in, if you remember, the name of a person, a book, a topic, and you can find it. We also have that free podcast roadmap. And again, we'll have all that linked. So it's Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy by Matthew Kelly. And the subtext is The Simple Art of Taking Back Your Life. So really what he talks about is when we're busy all the time, we're missing absolutely everything. So I just want to read you just 2 sentences so far. This is really all within the first 30 pages. And there was every page or 2, I'm highlighting something, but here we go. He said, the faster you go, the less you see. Go fast enough and everything becomes a blur. Does your life ever feel like one big blur? The faster you go, the more likely you are to crash. I talk a lot about in my groups that when you're having challenges with urges and cravings or behavior that isn't serving you, it's often that your life is so fast, you need to slow it down to figure out where you can intervene and how you can do something different. And a lot of that involves nervous system regulation and being able to make pattern interrupts and really learn how our psychology works so you can do things differently. But the bottom line is when you're going really fast, you cannot come up with solutions. You just can't. Okay, here's the other line though that just was a massive underline moment for me. Okay. Busy isn't going to quietly vacate your life. Joyless urgency will remain the status quo unless you decide to wrestle with busy and win. Isn't that incredible? So this whole book has just really been resonating. I think that this is one that we will be bringing into that book study that we'll be doing here shortly. If you're someone that wants to participate in that, I think it's about a 4-month period. We're going to do 1 book per month. We're going to meet weekly and do calls. I'm going to do this with Amanda Sabaker. If you're interested, this is one of the books that I think will really make the list. We're not 100% on what we're going to do yet, but my suspicion is I think that because we're not just looking at books when we're doing the book study, it's really about how can I actively implement this stuff in my life? Because if you don't do anything with it, there's no point to just reading something and then you continue the same mess in your life that's not working. This book has really had some real ramifications over the past few weeks and how I've been living my life. Okay, but back to the topic at hand. I had a friend tell me this recently, and then again, there's this post where they, in the past, let's say 2 years ago, they were having a lot of success. This person that wrote the post, they were on semaglutide and they said how they were doing really great. They lost weight. They felt great. And then they thought, okay, I'm doing so great. I think I can manage this on my own. I'm just going to go try this without medication. And then they gained back half the weight. And so they're like, okay, I got it. I need to go back on the medication. Then they go back on what they think is a stronger medication. They go back on tirzepatide and they're going up and up and up in the dose and they're noticing no weight loss. And now they're saying, what am I doing wrong? And they're wishing that they hadn't come off the med. And my other friend was telling me this person had actually come off for, sometimes people want to come off because of wanting to get pregnant, which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense sometimes to stop the medication, right? But a lot of the times it's a chronic disease. And the fact that we think somehow we can like willpower it, like I can just have strong enough habits when we're actually treating something physiologic, I think that's the actual thought error that occurs. I have seen this just historically that if someone has been doing really great, they have this thought in their mind. It usually comes from a standpoint of they either one, do not believe that they should have to be on medication, which I get it. That's a common belief that people have, or it's a financial issue, but it's usually one of the two things. And so they decide to come off of it. And what I universally see is that when they come back, they do not have the same results. And I don't say this to scare you all, okay? Because that's not everyone. But my point is, if there's an option not to quit, I would always pick that route over completely stopping the medication, assuming that we think you need it for life. Again, there's always that rare exception of the person that never really struggled with overweight and obesity long term. It's not really a high level of metabolic derangement. And the classic example is maybe their whole life they had everything where it wanted to be, and with pregnancy they gained some weight, and within a year after they can't lose the weight and they're really trying to do all the things. Or someone had an episode of a massive depression and they start to come out of that and they just realize, I can't get back off the weight that I put on. So the body's just not responding the same, again, because it's a metabolic disease that's happening. Here's the thing. When the medication worked before and now it's not, there's likely something that is overriding how effective the medication can be. And you hear me talk a lot about all these different buckets, that it's not just nutrition, what you're eating, when you're eating it, the quality of what you're eating. It's not just movement. It's also stress. It's muscle mass. It's all those things. What I think is this. I'm going to do this in a numbered order, but this is not in ranked order of how I would see it happen. When you initially lost that weight, there's a really good chance that if you were not doing body compositions and really following skeletal muscle mass and making sure that you were doing strength training and eating enough protein, doing all those things, that you lost muscle. And so now you just assume, okay, I'm going to go back on the medication and it's all going to work out. But your metabolism is a lot lower now because you lost muscle mass. You have lower metabolism. Things would need to look very different this time around compared to last time. You see what I'm saying? Because you're thinking, okay, I just gained back the weight. I'm just going to do the same things and it comes down. You don't have the same, I always say that the metabolic furnace, the power behind it, you don't have that because you lost a lot of muscle. Is everyone following me on that? That the first time you lost weight, yes, you might have been losing muscle as you did it, but you got to where you were, right? You could have just maintained there. But then when you gain back weight, even if we were to take you to where you were at that 50% mark before, you had more muscle at that time. So your metabolism was different. I hope everyone's following me on that because that's just like a really good nuance for us to see. The other thing too, remember we've talked about when you regain weight, when you're doing weight cycling up and down, you gain more visceral fat. That's that sick fat that makes it harder for you to achieve health long term. So not only can the muscle mass be down, the engine's down, and then also the pattern in which you put it on is not helpful to you. The other thing that I really see happen is that you have mismanaged expectations because you come back to this and you think, well, I'm going to have the exact same trajectory that I did the first time. But again, even if you just think about what we just talked about, it's not the same this time. And there's nothing wrong with this, okay? This is part of this being a chronic disease, is that we're always having to get a little bit creative and look at different things and really know what we're doing. That's fine. But you can't have the same expectation that you did the first time around. That needs to maybe look different. People also get very impatient. You want the results yesterday. Well, guess what? Again, this is a complex disease. We're going to have to figure out different things. It looks different this time around. Rarely you'll see something metabolic pop up. Someone developed sleep apnea, someone developed a thyroid problem, that there are other factors at play. That is a whole different bucket. This is why I always say that, let's say it's been more than 6 months to a year since you've last had your lab work or things really evaluated, you need to go have all that checked again. One of the nice things about being in a clinic like mine, I have the Rentia Metabolic Clinic. I see people in Indiana and Illinois. It's that I know you very closely because I'm talking to you all the time. But if you're not seeing a physician as often as in my clinic, I'm seeing people latest every month, some people more often. If you're not giving all that feedback to someone, I want you to imagine, unless you have a 3-hour visit when you go in, how could they dig into all these areas? They can't. They're a little bit guessing in the dark. You need to realize that they need to, again, redo lab work, kind of reassess things. Maybe they have another questionnaire that they give you. What are they going to do so that they can really dig into what is different? We change over time. You're not the same person. When you come to me 3 years later, you are different. I rarely have people that will leave the clinic and then they'll come back. And I always realize, oh my gosh, I am doing things so much more differently now, but also a lot has changed for them. It's an evolution of what happens over time. We're not just these static people. There's just like such a misconception with that. So again, it's that you did not have your metabolism overall looked at again. This last aspect that I really want to touch on, it's how high your stress levels are. I was joking in this 30-30 round, this January round. I was talking about stress management and nervous system regulation so much that I just joked at one point pretty much every single time we talk about this, but it's that important. I want to just give a little example here. I've done a lot of work on this over the past year. And one thing that I've really been loving right now, by the way, this is available for everyone. There's a really great once a month. It's called The Gathering and it's run by Jane Pilger. I'll put the link to the information here. So I've been going to these. And what she did in one of these here recently is she talked about what the nervous system does. It's always trying to say, am I safe? She talked about mapping the nervous system. What's happening when you're regulated and what's happening when you're dysregulated. And I want to try to bring her back on the podcast because I want her to talk about doing that because I think mapping that is really amazing. She's really skilled at walking you through it. So anyway, I'll put the information for all that. But the point being that there's a lot of work that needs to go into this because just like we talked about in the beginning of this episode with the book Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy, we live in a world that is bombarding us 24/7. If you're not going to take some time where you spend some of your day in silence so you can hear what you're thinking, you spend some of your time moving so that those emotions can work through your body. Just think about this for a second. You give a presentation at work, you do something before you have all this adrenaline, afterward the cortisol needs to go down. That's an experience. That's an ordeal. We back in the day, we were meant to, oh my gosh, there's a lion, go run away. We were always meant to assess what's safe, what's not, what's safe, what's not. But nowadays we're in very tame vanilla situations, but our nervous system is still like it was all those years ago. A lot of things have evolved around us, but modern world, ancient brain and body. This is a world that people do not look at enough. We don't live in a supportive world. It's a lot of social media coming in, a lot of productivity requirements at work. There's just a lot that's being asked of us 24/7. So it's a very radical, intentional act to say, listen, I'm not going to live with this stress level. I'm not going to live my life in this way. And if you love your life and how you feel, this is not a conversation that you need to take on. But if you're noticing, I'm tired all the time, I'm fatigued all the time, I'm unhappy, I'm ungrateful, I mean, you name it, a lot of this has to come back to what's happening in life for you. When you're in that, it is very hard for your body to say yes. You know what we'd love to do right now, Mateo? We'd love to drop a bunch of fat. Your body's trying to hold on. It's having to deal with all this chemical signaling mess that's occurring when the stress is high. When cortisol's up all the time, you are in fat storage mode. You are in a mode where you're retaining salt and fluid, and it's not great. And again, I always say this online in my videos. I'm not here to be the cortisol police and fear monger you on it, but it's a massive part. Think about the mental mind space that this person has to be in where they lost weight. And then they're noticing, oh my gosh, I've gained back half of it. They are panicked. You can tell from the way in which they're writing this message. They are freaked out. They're panicked. Okay, they are going with that energy then onto the medication. And then they're probably like every single day, look, I'm making stuff up at this point, but you can follow me on the lines, right? Every day they're looking at the scale. And then they're wondering, it's not working. I'm going higher. Then they're panicking even more as they're going up on the dose, but they're not seeing the results. Can we all see the picture of how that's not going to work? And I can sit here and explain some of the physiology and the psychology of it. But at the end of the day, you have to decide, is this something that I'm actually going to work through and I refuse to live my life this way anymore? Or am I just going to continue it? Well, a lot of what I like that Jane talks about The thing that just broke my brain when she talked about it is it's not your job to sit there and keep thinking, how can I not overeat? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't overeat. I shouldn't eat these things. It's your job to sit there and figure out how to self-regulate. That's your work. And a lot of the time, if we can do more of that, the other stuff resolves itself. Hopefully this episode was helpful today. I'm going to just leave it there for this. These are the kind of things that the topics and insights and things that I like to go through in my programs, because I'm sorry, it is not just about getting on a medication. It's really not that simple. If it was, you never really had a strong problem to begin with. There's a subset of people that never had a lot of weight to begin with. And I'm so glad that they're getting help with the meds. I'm not negating their experience either. And I don't want disease to get radically out of control before you get help. Definitely not saying that. And I'm very glad they're getting help. But if you're in the camp, which is usually more who long-term is listening to me, where you did lose weight, you are struggling, times do come when you struggle. This is a chronic thing. And so if we can start to look at, okay, these are all the different players. Which one do I think could be most impacted right now? For you, it might not be the stress part. It might just be you just stop drinking water. There can be very simple back to the basics that you can do. If you need this back to the basics series, I did this in January of 2025. I think it was 3 episodes where I went through, listen, like these are the basics. And I think I'm going to redo that coming up here because we just need to be reminded of just normal, simple basics. But if you are doing those things, because this person's talking about, I'm getting this amount of protein, I'm getting this amount of steps, and they're doing all the things. Okay, if all that stuff isn't working out for you, then if your medicine workup is completed, then we need to look at other areas like this stress stuff. And we need to figure out how we can get further with you, because this is the work long-term that makes it work out. And I'm going to give you one reason why. Let's say that you get to a place where you are better with knowing when you're triggered, you're knowing when you're not. That's knowing if your nervous system is regulated or dysregulated. There's lots of different terms that we could use for that. If that's happening, let's say that your weight is going in the wrong direction, these things are happening. You are so calm, you figure out a way. You see if the doctor needs to add another med. You see what you can move. You are creative, you are inspired, you are focused. You have access to the reasoning part of your brain. When you are panicked, which that's most of you because you have no concept of managing your mind, managing your stress, when that's going on, you are not logical with what you're doing. You're grasping, you're doing random things, you're constantly seeking novelty, you're constantly seeking high intensity. That does not work out long term. All right, I'm going to leave the episode here. I hope that today's episode was helpful. I would like to ask a big favor here. If you have been loving the podcast and you've been either you're new or you've been listening along for a while and you've not left a review, can you please do that wherever you're listening? I know it is such a pain, but it really helps for this podcast to be able to get out to more people that need to hear this, that are struggling, that are suffering, and they're getting diet culture, fat phobia, they're getting not the medical perspective with any compassion. And I want this message to be able to get to them. If you've been loving it, if you could leave a review, I would be most appreciative. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you next week. That marks the end of today's episode. But if you're newer to the podcast, I want to tell you about something that we have, and it's a free podcast roadmap. So this is perfect for any of you that are listening where you want to be directed to very specific episodes. So let's say that you are just starting out and you want to know, what should I do right when I start on the medications? Or you're experiencing certain side effects on the GLP-1s, or you want to know what to do if you're in a plateau, or if emotional eating is taking over, or if hunger levels are high. So we have many different categories of episodes that we've talked about, because there's a lot at this point. So if you want to be able to navigate that very easily, we have it broken down by category and also the episodes that are there, and we hyperlink to everything. So you can just click on it and find the episode, easy peasy. If you want that, you can go to rentiaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. We'll have it linked right here underneath the show notes where you're listening. And you can go ahead and get that free resource so that it makes it easy for you to navigate, because I know that it's really hard when someone has an established podcast. I am such a podcast fiend. I'm listening to podcasts all day long. And when I find one that I love, but there's a lot that are out there, I am so lost. So I hope that you enjoy this free podcast roadmap. Again, the link to get to that is going to be rentiaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. I hope this is helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.